The stars looked peaceful from the observation deck of Earth Defense Station Aurora. Commander Kyle Bennett stood with his coffee, watching the distant sun cast its light across the solar panels. It was supposed to be another quiet day. 3 months into his assignment, and the most exciting thing he had witnessed was a meteor shower. Kyle was 42 years old, a career military officer who had transferred to space duty after 20 years in the Navy. He missed the ocean sometimes, but there was something about being up here, floating above Earth, that made him feel closer to something bigger. His daughter sent him messages every week, telling him about her college classes and her new boyfriend. His ex-wife still included short notes at the end, asking him to stay safe. The alarm changed everything. At first, Kyle thought it was a drill. The screens lit up red, and the automated voice announced unidentified objects entering the solar system at impossible speeds. He set down his coffee and moved to his station, his fingers already typing commands before his brain caught up. "Talk to me," he said to Lieutenant Amy Carter, the sensor officer on duty. "7 objects, sir. They just appeared near Jupiter. Moving fast. Really fast." Amy's voice was steady, but Kyle could hear the edge in it. She was young, maybe 25, fresh from the academy. Kyle pulled up the data on his screen. The objects were massive, bigger than anything humanity had ever built. They were shaped like crescents, all sharp angles and dark metal. As he watched, they began moving toward the inner solar system, toward Earth. "Send the alert to command," Kyle said. "Wake everyone up. This is not a drill." Across the solar system, other stations were seeing the same thing. On Research Station Darwin, orbiting between Earth and Mars, Dr. Helen Price was in the middle of a lecture to her students when the alert came through. She stopped mid-sentence, staring at the data on her tablet. "Everyone stay calm," she said, but her hands were shaking. Helen had 3 children back on Earth. She talked to them every night before bed, even though the time delay meant they couldn't really have conversations. She sent them videos. They sent her drawings. Station Darwin was studying solar radiation patterns. 200 people lived there, scientists and their families. There was a school, a garden, even a small park where children played in the low gravity. Helen's youngest daughter wanted to come visit next summer. On the 3rd station, the Kepler Observatory, things were worse. Commander Greg Lawson received the alert and immediately began evacuation procedures. But Kepler was a research station, not a military one. They had no weapons, no shields, nothing but their engines and hope. "Get everyone to the escape pods," Greg ordered. He was 55, close to retirement. He had been planning to go back to Earth next month to see his first grandchild being born. The alien ships moved with purpose. They accelerated toward the 3 stations, ignoring all attempts at communication. Earth sent every greeting they knew, every mathematical sequence, every symbol of peace humanity had prepared for first contact. The aliens did not respond. Kyle watched the ships approach on his screens. They were beautiful in a terrible way, like sharks or lightning. When they were close enough, he could see lights moving across their surfaces, patterns that might have been windows or weapons or something else entirely. "They're powering up," Amy said. Her voice was quiet now. "Energy readings are off the scale." Kyle opened the station-wide channel. "All personnel. This is Commander Bennett. Move to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." He could hear the panic starting in the corridors outside the command center. People running. Someone crying. An alarm that wouldn't stop. Kyle thought about his daughter. He had promised to be at her graduation next year. The first alien ship fired on Research Station Darwin. Helen Price saw the blast coming. She had gotten most of her students into the shelter, but she had gone back for one more. A boy named Peter, only 8 years old, too scared to move. She was carrying him when the wall exploded. The energy beam cut through the station like it was paper. Atmosphere vented into space. The lights went out. Helen felt herself being pulled toward the void, and she held onto Peter as tightly as she could, but he slipped from her grasp. She saw him tumbling away into the darkness, his mouth open in a scream she couldn't hear. Then everything went red, and Helen didn't see anything else. Station Darwin broke apart in seconds. 200 people gone. Families, friends, children who would never grow up, scientists who would never make their discoveries. Kyle watched it happen on his screen and felt his world stop. He had friends on Darwin. He had attended a birthday party there last month, via video call. "Sir," Amy's voice pulled him back. "They're targeting Kepler." Greg Lawson got 70 people into escape pods before the second alien ship fired. The beam hit the main reactor, and the explosion was visible from Earth. The pods scattered like seeds in the wind, but 3 of them were caught in the blast. The rest tumbled away, broadcasting emergency signals. 53 survivors from Kepler, out of 300. Kyle knew Aurora was next. He had maybe 2 minutes. "Evacuate," he ordered. "Everyone off the station now. What about you?" "I'm staying. Someone needs to keep sending the data to Earth. Maybe they can use it to prepare." Kyle smiled at her. "Go. That's an order." Amy hesitated, then nodded. She ran for the escape pods with the others. Kyle heard their footsteps fading, heard the pods launching one by one. The station felt empty, quiet, like a house after everyone had gone to bed. He kept his hands on the console, sending every bit of data he could to the command center in Houston. He recorded a message for his daughter, telling her he loved her and that he was proud of her. He told her to be brave. The alien ship approached. Kyle could see it now through the viewport, massive and terrible and utterly incomprehensible. He wondered what they looked like. He wondered why they were doing this. The energy beam hit the power core. Kyle had 3 seconds to feel the heat before the explosion took him. Earth Defense Station Aurora, home to 150 people, ceased to exist. On Earth, Captain Lisa Morgan stood in the command center in Houston, watching 3 points of light disappear from her screen. She had worked with Kyle. They had gone through training together. He had been her friend for 15 years. 2,347 people. That was the count. Scientists, engineers, military personnel, children, students, dreamers, people who had gone to space because they believed in humanity's future among the stars, all gone in less than 10 minutes. Lisa's hands were shaking so badly she had to hold onto the edge of the console. Around her, people were crying. Someone was throwing up in the corner. The general in charge was on 3 different phone calls at once, his face pale. Then, the message came through. The alien ships, having destroyed what they perceived as threats, sent a standard greeting. It appeared on every screen, translated through mathematical language. The message was simple and calm. Dangerous weapons platforms have been neutralized. The inhabitants of the 3rd planet are now safe. We are the Valorian Galactic Empire. We come in peace. Prepare for formal contact. Lisa read it 3 times. 4 times. 5. They thought they had helped. They thought they had saved Earth by murdering thousands of innocent people. Something broke inside her. Something that had been holding back the rage and the grief and the absolute horror of what had just happened. She reached forward and opened a channel on all frequencies, broadcasting to every alien ship, every satellite, everything that could hear. "You just murdered 2,000 innocent people." Her voice was steady, cold. Those were not weapons platforms. They were research stations, science facilities. There were children there, families, people who never did anything except try to learn and explore and make the universe a better place. She took a breath. "You attacked our home, our people, our future, and you expected us to thank you for it." Lisa looked at the screen, at the alien ships still hanging in space above Earth, like executioners waiting for applause. "This is Earth," she said. "This is humanity. And we will never forget what you did today. The transmission ended. In the command center, everyone was silent. They all knew that those words might have just started a war humanity couldn't win, but they also knew that Lisa had said what every single person on Earth was feeling. In orbit, aboard the Valorian flagship, Commander Zorthane received the transmission. He listened to it 3 times, his strange alien features shifting through expressions his crew couldn't quite read. "They are upset about the weapons platforms," he said finally. "Should we respond?" his second officer asked. Zorthane thought about it. In 15,000 years of galactic expansion, the Valorian Empire had encountered hundreds of species. None of them had ever reacted like this. Most were grateful to be protected. Some were afraid. Some surrendered immediately. None of them called planets home. None of them mourned like this. "Send a request for formal diplomatic contact," Zorthane said. "We will need to explain the misunderstanding." But even as he gave the order, something in the human's voice bothered him. The way she had said, "our home," with such pain and fury. The way she had listed what was lost, not in terms of strategic value, but in terms of people. "Children," she had said. "Families." The Valorians had no word for family, not really. They were bred in facilities, raised in groups, assigned to roles based on genetic optimization. The concept of a child belonging to specific adults was primitive, inefficient, but the human had said it like it mattered more than anything else in the universe. Zorthane looked at the planet below, blue and green and wrapped in white clouds. It looked peaceful, beautiful, fragile. He wondered if they had made a mistake. On Earth, Lisa Morgan stood at her station and watched the alien ships. They were just sitting there now, waiting for a response to their diplomatic request. She thought about Kyle, about Helen, about Greg, about all the others whose names she knew, and hundreds more she didn't. The general approached her. "What do we do?" he asked. Lisa looked at him. She looked at the screens. She looked at the planet below, where 7 billion people were just now learning what had happened above their heads. "We talk to them," she said, "but on our terms. And they are going to learn what it means to hurt humanity, what it means to attack someone's home." The general nodded slowly. "Should we prepare for war?" "We should prepare for everything," Lisa said, "because they just learned that humans don't forgive easily, and they don't forget at all." 3 weeks after the incident, Ambassador Daniel Hayes stood in front of a mirror and straightened his tie. He was 50 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, with gray hair and scars on his hands from his time as a Marine. He had negotiated peace treaties in war zones. He had talked down terrorists. He had spent 20 years learning how to stay calm when everything around him was chaos. But this was different. "You ready?" Dr. Patricia Wells asked from the doorway. She was younger than Daniel, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a gentle voice. She was a xenoanthropologist, someone who studied alien cultures. Before the incident, her work had been entirely theoretical. Now, she was going to meet real aliens, face to face. "As ready as I'll ever be," Daniel said. He picked up his briefcase. Inside were documents, photographs, and a data drive containing thousands of messages from families of the victims, messages they wanted the aliens to hear. Commander Greg Foster joined them in the hallway. Greg was 48, a military officer with a quiet intensity. He had lost friends in the attack. Everyone on the delegation had lost someone. They walked to the shuttle in silence. Around them, the lunar base was busy with activity. Humanity had built this place in secret over the past 3 weeks, working faster than anyone thought possible. It was neutral ground, halfway between Earth and the alien ships still waiting in orbit. The shuttle ride took 20 minutes. Daniel spent it looking at his tablet, reading the profiles of the aliens they were about to meet. The Valorians, a civilization that had existed for 15,000 years. They controlled hundreds of planets, They had technology that made humanity look like children playing with sticks, and they had killed over 2,000 people without even meaning to. The meeting room was large and cold, with windows looking out at Earth. Daniel could see the blue planet hanging there, beautiful and fragile. Somewhere down there, his sister was watching this on television. Somewhere down there, families were waiting to see if justice would be done. The Valorians arrived exactly on time. Daniel had seen pictures, but nothing prepared him for meeting them in person. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with skin that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Their faces were angular, with large eyes that didn't blink often enough. They moved with perfect efficiency. No wasted motion. The lead Valorian stepped forward. "I am High Emissary Zorthane," he said. His voice came through a translator device, smooth and emotionless. "I represent the Valorian High Council. We are here to resolve the misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. Daniel felt anger flash through him, but he kept his face neutral. "I am Ambassador Daniel Hayes. This is Dr. Patricia Wells and Commander Greg Foster. We represent Earth and humanity." They sat down at opposite sides of the table. 2 other Valorians flanked Zorthane, taking notes on devices Daniel didn't recognize. One of them was younger, he thought. Smaller. She kept glancing at the humans with something that might have been curiosity. "Let us begin," Zorthane said. "The Valorian Empire acknowledges that your species suffered losses during our security operation. While the destruction of the weapons platforms was necessary for your protection, we understand you are distressed. We are prepared to offer compensation." Daniel let the words hang in the air for a moment. "Weapons, platforms," he said quietly. "Is that what you think they were?" "Our sensors detected high-energy emissions and defensive capabilities," Zorthane explained. "Standard procedure requires neutralization of potential threats before first contact." "They were research stations," Patricia said. She opened her tablet and projected images onto the wall. Aurora Station appeared, showing the solar panels and observation equipment. This one studied solar activity. No weapons. She switched to another image. Darwin Station. This one researched radiation patterns. 200 people lived there. Families. Children. The younger Valorian, whose name was Kelsara, leaned forward slightly. Her colors shifted to something that might have been surprise. "Families?" Zorthane repeated. "You keep biological offspring in space facilities?" "Of course," Patricia said. "Many of our researchers bring their families with them. It's normal for us." "That seems inefficient," Zorthane observed. "Children serve no functional purpose in research environments." Daniel watched Greg's jaw tighten. He put a hand on the commander's arm, a silent message to stay calm. "High Emissary," Daniel said. "I think we need to clarify something. You're talking about compensation. What exactly are you offering?" Zorthane gestured to one of his aides, who brought up a holographic display. "We are prepared to provide advanced medical technology that will extend your species' lifespan by approximately 40%. We will also grant resource extraction rights on 2 uninhabited moons in your system. Additionally, we can supply manufacturing technology that will accelerate your industrial development by several centuries." It was a generous offer. Daniel knew that. Any government would have jumped at it a month ago. Technology that could save millions of lives. Resources that could end poverty. Advancement beyond humanity's wildest dreams. But it wasn't enough. "You cannot replace what you took from us," Daniel said quietly. Zorthane's colors shifted to something that might have been confusion. "The technology we offer has significant value. It exceeds the loss of the obsolete facilities." "The facilities were not what we lost," Patricia said. She pulled up a new image. A woman with kind eyes, smiling at the camera. "This is Dr. Helen Price. She studied solar radiation. She had 3 children on Earth. She died trying to save a student. She, 17, Chanel Arfis. She, another image, a young man in uniform, Lieutenant Kyle Bennett. He stayed at his post to send data to Earth. He had a daughter in college. Image after image, faces, names, stories. Patricia went through dozens of them, and the Valorians watched in silence. "These are the people you killed," Patricia said. Each one of them was unique, irreplaceable. Each one had people who loved them, dreams they'll never achieve, children who will grow up without parents, parents who will bury their children. Kelzara was staring at the images. Her colors had shifted to something darker, more muted. Daniel noticed that she was trembling slightly. "I do not understand," Zorthane said finally. "These are individuals. You speak of them as if they have value beyond their function." And the room went very quiet. "Every person has value," Daniel said, "not because of what they do, but because of who they are, because they're alive, because they matter to someone." "This is inefficient thinking," Zorthane replied. "In the Valorian Empire, individuals are valued for their contribution to the collective. When one is lost, another is assigned. The system continues." "We're not talking about a system," Greg said, speaking for the first time. His voice was hard. "We're talking about people, human beings, sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, friends, lovers. Every single person you killed was someone's entire world." Zorthane looked at each of them in turn. "You are upset about the loss of specific individuals rather than the overall impact to your civilization." "Yes," Daniel said simply. "This is irrational. This is human." The silence stretched. Daniel could see that Zorthane was trying to process something that didn't fit into his understanding of the universe. The Valorians had conquered hundreds of species, but they had never encountered anything like this. "Let me ask you something," Patricia said. "High Emissary, do you have a family?" "I was bred in Facility 73, Batch 842, Zorthane said. "I was assigned to diplomatic training at maturation. I serve the Empire. So, new parents? New siblings? These concepts are outdated. We have moved beyond primitive attachment bonds." "There," Patricia nodded slowly. "Then you can't understand what you took from us. You can't understand what it means when a mother loses her child, when a husband loses his wife, when friends are ripped away. You can't understand because you've never felt it." Grote. "Emotion is inefficient," Zorthane said. "It clouds judgment, creates weakness." "Maybe," Daniel said. "But it's also what makes us human. It's what makes life worth living. And it's why we'll never accept your compensation. Because you can't put a price on a human life." He leaned forward. "You came here thinking this would be simple. You thought you could give us some technology and we'd forget what happened. But we won't forget. We can't, because forgetting would dishonor the people who died. It would mean their lives didn't matter." "So what do you want?" Zorthane asked. "Acknowledgement," Daniel said. "Not of a misunderstanding. Not of an unfortunate incident. We want you to acknowledge that you were wrong, that you killed innocent people, that you should have been more careful, that their lives mattered." "The Valorian Empire does not admit fault," Zorthane said. "It would set a dangerous precedent. Then we have nothing more to discuss." Daniel stood up. Patricia and Greg followed. The Valorians remained seated, their colors shifting rapidly through patterns Daniel couldn't interpret. "You would reject our offer?" Zorthane asked. "You would refuse advanced technology that could save millions of your people?" "We would rather remain human than gain the galaxy at the cost of our humanity," Daniel said. "You attacked our home. You killed our people. And you expected us to thank you for it. That's not going to happen." He walked to the door, then paused and looked back. "You've existed for 15,000 years. You've conquered hundreds of worlds. But you've forgotten something important. You've forgotten what it means to care about someone more than yourself. What it means to protect something, not because it's useful, but because it's precious. That is weakness, Zorthane said. No, Daniel replied. That's strength. That's what will let us stand here and tell you no, even when you could destroy us. That's what will let us look at everything you're offering and walk away. Because it's not enough. Because nothing will ever be enough to replace what you took. He opened the door. When you're ready to truly understand what you did, we'll be here. But until then, we have nothing to say to each other. When you're ready, the three humans left. The Valorians sat in silence, watching them go. Kelzara was the first to speak. High Emissary, may I request permission to observe the humans more closely? Why? Zorthane asked. Because I think we are missing something important. The way they speak of these individuals. The emotion. It is not weakness. It is something else. Something we need to understand. Zorthane looked at the images still displayed on the wall. The human delegation had only shown a fraction of the victims, but each one had been presented with such care, such detail, as if every single life mattered equally. Permission granted, he said. Learn what you can. Report back to me. After Kelsara left, Zorthane sat alone in the room, looking at Earth through the window. The planet seemed so small from here. Fragile, but the humans who lived there had just refused everything the Valorian Empire could offer. They had walked away from advancement beyond their dreams because it wasn't enough to honor their dead. For the first time in his long life, Zorthane wondered if the Empire might have made a mistake. Not tactically, not strategically, but something deeper. Something about the way they viewed life itself. He thought about the faces on the wall. Each one different. Each one, according to the humans, important, valuable, irreplaceable. The concept made no sense to him. But he was starting to suspect that it should. Kelzara had never been to a planet's surface before. Most Valorians hadn't. They were born in space stations, lived on ships, died in service to the Empire. Planets were resources to be managed, not homes to visit. But here she was, standing in a shuttle descending toward Earth, watching the clouds rush past the windows. Patricia Wells sat across from her, offering a gentle smile. First time planet-side? Yes, Kelzara admitted. Her translator made her voice sound uncertain, which was accurate. She was uncertain about many things lately. Is it always this disorienting? The gravity will feel strange at first, heavier, but you'll adjust. Patricia looked out the window. I grew up down there. In a small town in California. I didn't go to space until I was 25. And I remember thinking how empty it felt. How quiet. Empty? Kelsara's colors shifted to confusion. Space is infinite. It contains everything, but no grass, no wind, no smell of rain. Patricia smiled. I guess that's the difference between us. You see space as everything. We see Earth as home. The shuttle landed in Houston, near the memorial site. Commander Greg Foster was waiting for them with a security team. He looked at Kelzara with hard eyes, but he nodded politely. Welcome to Earth, he said, though his tone suggested it wasn't entirely a welcome. They drove through the city in an electric vehicle. Kelzara pressed close to the window, watching everything. She had studied human civilization through data files, but seeing it was different. The buildings were chaotic compared to Valorian architecture. Different styles, different heights, different colors. Inefficient, but also beautiful. People walked on the streets, talking and laughing. Children ran past, chasing each other. An old couple sat on a bench, holding hands. Kelsara watched them, trying to understand. They were past optimal working age. They contributed nothing to the collective. Why were they together? What purpose did hand-holding serve? Those are my neighbors, Greg said, following her gaze. Married for 53 years, they have 6 grandchildren. Married, Kelsara repeated. A long-term reproductive pairing? More than that. They chose to spend their lives together, to support each other, to love each other. Greg's voice softened slightly. The old man had a stroke 2 years ago. Can't walk very well anymore. She takes care of him. Every day. Even though it's hard. Why? Kelsara asked. If he cannot function properly, why not assign him to a medical facility? Why burden herself? Kels. Why? Greg was quiet for a moment. Because he's not a burden. He's her husband. She loves him. She wants to be with him until the end, whatever that looks like. Kelsara filed this information away, but she didn't understand it. Not really. The memorial site was in the center of the city, where one of the old parks used to be. As they approached, Kelsara saw hundreds of humans gathered there. Thousands. Maybe. All standing quietly. Many holding flowers or photographs. Patricia led her through the crowd. Humans stared at Kelsara as she passed. Some with anger. Some with curiosity. Some with grief so raw on their faces that even Kelsara, who had been trained to see emotion as weakness, felt something uncomfortable in her chest. The memorial itself was a circular wall of black stone, 30 feet high. Names were carved into it. Thousands of names. Kelsara approached slowly, running her hand along the stone. Dr. Helen Price. Lieutenant Kyle Bennett. Commander Greg Lawson. On and on. Every person who had died. 2,347 names, Patricia said softly. We carved them all. Every single one. Because every single one mattered. Around the wall, people had left offerings. Flowers, mostly, but also photographs, letters, children's drawings, pieces of jewelry. Kelsara picked up one of the letters. It was handwritten, the ink smudged in places as if the writer had been crying. Mom, I miss you every day. I'm trying to be strong like you taught me, but it's so hard. I hope you're proud of me. I love you forever. Your son, Peter. Kelsara read it 3 times. The words were simple, but the emotion behind them was enormous. This human, this Peter, was grieving for someone who could no longer serve any function, someone who was gone. And yet the grief didn't fade. It persisted. It mattered. Can I ask a question? Kelsara said. Of course. Why do you do this? The memorial. The flowers. The letters. The deceased cannot perceive these gestures. They serve no functional purpose. Patricia was quiet for a long moment, looking at the wall. They're not for the dead. Not really. They're for us. For the living. They help us remember. Help us process the grief. Help us feel like we're still connected to the people we lost. She touched one of the names gently. My cousin died on Darwin Station. Her name was Jennifer. She was 28. She loved astronomy and terrible jokes and coffee ice cream. When we were kids, we used to catch fireflies in the summer and make wishes on them. Patricia's voice cracked slightly. She's gone. I know that. But when I come here and see her name, it helps me remember that she was real. That she lived. That she mattered. That I'm not the only one who misses her. Around them, other humans were doing the same thing. Touching names, leaving flowers, crying. A woman was reading a letter aloud to the wall, her voice shaking. A man stood with his hand pressed to a name, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. 2 children were drawing pictures in chalk on the ground, their mother watching with tears streaming down her face. You all grieve together, Kelsara observed. Yes, it helps. Knowing we're not alone in this. Patricia looked at her. Do Valorians grieve? No. When one of us ceases functioning, we note it in records and assign a replacement. Emotion about death would be counterproductive. But doesn't that make death meaningless? If no one mourns, if no one remembers, then what's the point of living? Kelsara didn't have an answer. They spent 3 hours at the memorial. Greg pointed out the names of people he had known, a pilot he had trained with, an engineer who had helped design the station systems, a child who had sent him drawings once a month. Her name was Sophie, Greg said, his finger on the small name carved into the stone. She was 7. She wanted to be an astronaut. She used to draw pictures of planets and send them to everyone on the station. She drew one for me with a purple sun and green aliens. I still have it. His voice was rough. She was in the observation deck when the blast hit. Never had a chance. Kelsara looked at the name. Sophie Martin. Age 7. One individual out of 2,000. Functionally insignificant to the Empire. But to Greg, to her family, to everyone who knew her, she was an entire universe. Her dreams mattered. Her drawings mattered. Her loss created a hole that would never be filled. I am beginning to understand, Kelsara said slowly. You do not value individuals for what they contribute. You value them for who they are. Yes, Greg said, and when they die, the loss is permanent. There is no replacement that will suffice. Yes, this makes you vulnerable. If every loss matters, then every death is a tragedy. Yes, Kelsara's colors shifted to something darker. But this also makes you strong. Because you will fight harder to protect each other. Because every life is worth defending. Greg looked at her, surprise flickering across his face. You're smarter than your boss. High Emissary Zorthane is brilliant, Kelsara said. But he has served the Empire for 300 years. It is difficult for him to see past what he has always known. They left the memorial as the sun was setting. The sky turned orange and red, colors that Kelsara had never seen except on screens. The humans around her stopped to watch, many holding hands or embracing. A moment of beauty, shared between people who loved each other. That evening, Patricia invited Kelsara to dinner at her home. It was a small house in the suburbs, with a garden in the front and children's toys scattered in the yard next door. Inside, Patricia introduced her to her partner, Sarah, and their daughter, Emma. Emma was 5 years old, curious and energetic. She stared at Kelsara with wide eyes. Are you an alien? Emma asked. Emma, we use polite words, Sarah said gently. It's all right, Kelsara said. Yes, I am from another world. Cool. Can you fly? No, I cannot fly. Oh, Emma looked disappointed for a moment, then brightened. Before Kelsara could respond, Emma ran off and returned with a stack of papers covered in crayon drawings. Planets, stars, spaceships. Families holding hands under alien suns. Dreams of a child who had never seen the galaxy but imagined it with wonder. They ate dinner together. Simple food, but Patricia and Sarah had clearly put effort into it. They talked about Emma's school, about Sarah's work as a teacher, about the neighbor's cat that kept climbing into their yard. Mundane things. Unimportant things, but not unimportant at all, Kelsara realized. This was life. This was what humans valued. Not great achievements or contributions to the collective, but these small moments of connection and joy. The way Emma laughed at her own joke, the way Patricia and Sarah looked at each other when they thought no one was watching, the way they included Kelsara in their family dinner, despite her being one of the species that had killed thousands of humans. After Emma was put to bed, the 3 adults sat in the living room. Patricia poured tea. Can I ask you something? Kelsara said. Why are you being kind to me? My people killed your cousin, killed your friends. Why help me understand? Patricia considered this. Because understanding prevents more deaths. If we can make your people see what you're starting to see, maybe we can prevent this from happening to anyone else, human or alien. And because we want to believe that even someone from a very different culture can learn empathy. Sarah added. That connection is possible between any two beings willing to try. Your people call me an enemy, Kelsara said. You're not, Patricia said firmly. You didn't fire the weapons. You didn't make the decision. You're just someone trying to understand a situation that your culture never prepared you for. Kelsara felt something strange, an ache in her chest that had nothing to do with physical pain. I wish we had been more careful. I wish we had tried to understand before we acted. So do we, Patricia said softly. That night, Kelsara stood in the guest room and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, thousands of humans were sleeping in their homes, surrounded by family and friends, living lives that the Valorian Empire would have called inefficient, primitive, weak. But Kelsara was starting to realize that the Empire was wrong. Humans weren't weak because they loved. They were stronger because of it. Their attachments didn't make them vulnerable. They made them willing to fight harder, sacrifice more, endure longer. Because they were protecting something precious. She thought about Zorthane, waiting in orbit. She thought about the High Council, expecting this to be resolved with simple compensation. She thought about the Empire's 15,000 years of conquest, never stopping to consider what they were destroying. Kelsara pulled out her communication device and began recording a report. But this time, she didn't just document facts. She described what she had seen, what she had felt, what she was beginning to understand about humanity and emotion, and the power of caring about someone more than yourself. She described the memorial, the grief, the love, the strength, hidden inside vulnerability. She ended the report with a warning. If the Empire continues to treat humans as just another species to be managed, we will create an enemy unlike any we have faced. Because humans don't just fight for territory or resources, they fight for each other. And that makes them more dangerous than any weapon we possess. She sent the report and waited. Somewhere in orbit, Zorthane would receive it. Somewhere in the Empire, the High Council would read it. She wondered if it would be enough to change their minds. She wondered if 15,000 years of thinking one way could be overturned by one evening with a human family. But she hoped. And hope, she was learning, was a very human thing. The negotiations had been stalled for 2 weeks. Daniel Hayes sat in the conference room on the lunar base, reviewing the same proposals over and over. The Valorians offered more technology, more resources, more promises. Everything except what humanity actually wanted. Acknowledgement, accountability, justice. Patricia came in with fresh coffee and a worried expression. We just received Kelsara's report, the one she sent to Zorthane. And she gets it. She really understands what we're trying to say. But the High Council rejected her recommendations. They're calling her observations, emotional contamination. They're pulling her back. Daniel set down his tablet. So, we're back to square one. Worse than that. Patricia pulled up a document on the screen. Our intelligence picked up encrypted communications between Valorian ships. Greg managed to get a partial translation. Daniel read it, then read it again. His jaw tightened. The communication was from General Thalcross, the military commander of the Valorian fleet. He was proposing a solution to what he called the human problem. A swift, military action, complete occupation of Earth. Forced integration into the Empire before humanity developed the capability to resist effectively. They're planning to invade us, Daniel said quietly. Some of them are, not all. There's debate in their command structure, but Thalcross has support from the militant faction. Patricia sat down. Daniel, we can't fight them. Even with everything we've learned from studying their technology, we're decades behind. Maybe centuries. I know. So what do we do? Daniel thought about his sister back on Earth, about her kids, about the millions of families who had no idea that an alien empire was debating whether to conquer their world. He thought about Kyle and Helen and all the others who had died. He thought about what humanity stood for. We make it clear that invasion isn't an option, he said. We draw a line in the sand and dare them to cross it. Greg Foster arrived an hour later with more intelligence. The news wasn't good. 3 more Valorian warships had entered the solar system. They were positioning themselves near Earth's major cities. Not close enough to be immediately threatening, but close enough to make a point. They're preparing, Greg said. This is classic military doctrine. Position your forces, intimidate the target, wait for surrender. Then we don't give them the satisfaction, Daniel said. He opened a communication channel to the Valorian flagship. This is Ambassador Hayes. I request an immediate meeting with High Emissary Zorthane. The response came quickly. Agreed. 1 hour. They gathered in the same conference room as before. But this time, General Thalcross was present alongside Zorthane. The general was larger than the other Valorians, his colors darker and more aggressive. He looked at the humans like they were insects. Ambassador Hayes, Zorthane began, I trust you are ready to discuss more reasonable terms. That depends on your definition of reasonable, Daniel said. He pulled up an image on the screen. The encrypted communication from Thalcross. Is planning an invasion reasonable? The room went silent. Zorthane's colors shifted rapidly. Thalcross, however, showed no reaction. You intercepted military communications, the general said. His voice through the translator was cold. Impressive for a primitive species. We're learning fast, Greg said. That's what happens when you motivate us. Whoa. So you admit you're planning to invade? Patricia asked. I am proposing a practical solution, Thalcross replied. Your species is stubborn and emotional. You refuse reasonable compensation. You cling to outdated concepts of individual value. The logical response is forced integration. Within a generation, you will be properly assimilated. Your inefficient attachment behaviors will be corrected. Daniel felt rage building inside him, but he kept his voice level. Let me make something very clear, General. You will not invade Earth. You will not occupy our planet. You will not assimilate our people. You cannot stop us, Thalcross said simply. Your military capability is minimal. Your defensive systems are primitive. We could control your planet within 72 hours. Maybe, Daniel admitted. Why not? Because we'll make it cost more than you're willing to pay. Daniel stood up. You think you know humans because you've observed us for a few weeks, but you don't understand what you're dealing with. You don't understand what happens when you threaten our home. He activated another screen. Images appeared. Shipyards on Mars, hidden in the canyons. Manufacturing facilities in the asteroid belt. Weapons platforms being constructed on the far side of the moon. Humanity's entire industrial capacity redirected toward defense in just 3 weeks. We've been busy, Greg said. Reverse engineering your technology. Building our own versions. They're crude compared to yours, but they work. And we're getting better every day. You have perhaps 20 small ships, Thalcross said dismissively. We have hundreds, thousands, across the Empire. We have 7 billion people who will never surrender, Daniel replied. Every city, every town, every home. You want to occupy Earth? Fine, but you'll have to fight for every inch of it, and we'll make sure the entire galaxy knows what you did, how you murdered civilians, how you invaded a peaceful planet, how the mighty Valorian Empire couldn't defeat humanity without using overwhelming force against scientists and children. Zorthane spoke for the first time. You would start a war you cannot win? We would fight a war that needs to be fought, Patricia said. Because some things are worth dying for. Our freedom, our home, our right to exist as we choose. This is irrational, Thalcross said. You will lose. Your species will be extinct or enslaved. Maybe, Daniel said. But we'll hurt you first. We'll make you bleed. We'll show the entire galaxy that the Valorian Empire isn't invincible, and every other species you've conquered will start to wonder if they could do the same. The silence that followed was heavy. Zorthane's colors shifted through complex patterns. Even Thalkros seemed to be considering something. You would condemn your species to extinction for pride? The general asked. Not for pride, Daniel said. For principle. For the idea that no one has the right to take our home from us. For the belief that every human life matters and is worth defending. You call it irrational. We call it human. Alder Ply was, in quote, he leaned forward, his hands flat on the table. You attacked our home once already. You killed over 2,000 people. And you expected us to bow down and thank you for it. That's not going to happen. Not now. Not ever. Daniel took a breath. And when he spoke again, his voice carried across the room with absolute certainty. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to make a choice. You can acknowledge what you did wrong. You can admit that those 2,000 lives mattered. You can work with us to make sure nothing like this happens again. Or, you can try to invade. And if you do, you'll learn what it means to fight a species that has nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. You cannot defeat us militarily, Thalkros said. We don't need to defeat you. We just need to make the cost too high. Because that's what it will cost you. We'll fight in orbit. We'll fight in the atmosphere. We'll fight in every city and every town. We'll use every weapon we have and every weapon we can make. And when you finally occupy our planet, you'll find out that occupation isn't the same as victory. Greg stood up beside Daniel. I'm a military man. I understand tactics and strategy, and I can tell you right now that occupying Earth would be your worst nightmare. Guerrilla warfare in 7 billion homes, resistance in every city, sabotage of every facility you build. You'd never have peace. You'd never be safe. And every other species in your empire would see that humans never stopped fighting. We would execute resistors, Thalkros said. Then you'd have to execute all of us, Patricia replied. Because every human will resist. The teachers, the farmers, the children, everyone. That's what you don't understand about us. We're not individuals who happen to live near each other. We're a family. An enormous, complicated, sometimes dysfunctional family, but family. And when you threaten one of us, you threaten all of us. She pulled up another image. The memorial in Houston, packed with thousands of people. You see this? This is what happens when you hurt us. We come together. We remember. We refuse to let the loss be meaningless. And we commit ourselves to making sure it never happens again. 3 weeks ago, Daniel said, you could have had humanity as an ally, a friend, a trading partner. We would have been excited to meet you, eager to learn from you, happy to be part of a larger galactic community. He pointed at the screen showing the destroyed stations. But you destroyed that possibility when you fired those weapons. You killed our people. You attacked our home. And now, we'll never trust you. We'll never forget. And we'll never, ever forgive until you acknowledge what you did and why it was wrong. Zorthane was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. Uncertain. What if we cannot give you what you want? What if the High Council refuses to admit fault? And then we're at war. Daniel said simply. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, because you'll keep trying to force us into your empire, and we'll keep refusing. And sooner or later, one of us will fire the first shot. And when that happens, there's no going back. This is madness, Thalkros said. You would risk everything for stubborn pride. It's not pride, Daniel said again. It's love. Love for our home. Love for our people. Love for the idea that every life has value and deserves to be protected. You think that's weakness. But it's the strongest thing in the universe. It's what lets us stand here and tell you no. What lets us face down your entire empire. What lets us choose extinction over submission. He looked at Zorthane. You have a choice to make, High Emissary. You can keep treating this as a negotiation over resources and territory, or you can recognize it for what it really is, a moral question about the value of life and the rights of sentient beings to determine their own fate. The High Council will never agree to your terms, Zorthane said quietly. Then change their minds. Make them understand. Because if you invade Earth, you won't just be fighting humans. You'll be fighting an idea. The idea that home matters. That family matters. That individual lives matter more than imperial expansion. And ideas are a lot harder to kill than people. Daniel gathered his papers. We're done negotiating. Send our terms to your High Council. Full acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Formal apology. Autonomy for humanity. Those are non-negotiable. Accept them, and we can move forward. Reject them, and prepare for war. The humans left the room. Behind them, Thalkros and Zorthane sat in silence. They are bluffing, the general said finally. They cannot win. Perhaps, Zorthane replied. But I am beginning to think that winning is not the point. Back in the human section of the base, Daniel sat down heavily. His hands were shaking. Patricia put a hand on his shoulder. That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen, she said. Maybe both. Daniel looked at his tablet, where messages were already coming in from Earth. The speech had been broadcast worldwide. Billions of people had watched him draw the line in the sand. The messages were supportive. Proud. Ready to fight, if necessary. We just bet everything on a bluff, Greg said. It's not a bluff, Daniel replied. If they invade, we will fight. And they'll wish they hadn't. But we'll lose. Probably. But we'll make them remember us. And maybe that's enough. For 3 days, nothing happened. The Valorian ships remained in orbit. Humanity waited, holding its breath. Daniel spent the time in meetings with world leaders, coordinating defense plans that everyone knew were inadequate. Patricia compiled more reports on human culture, hoping somehow to break through to the Valorian High Council. Greg oversaw the military preparations, training people to fight an enemy they couldn't defeat. On the 4th day, a message arrived. High Emissary Zorthane requested a private meeting with Daniel Hayes. No other delegates. No observers. Just the two of them. Daniel agreed, though Greg protested. It could be a trap, the commander said. If they wanted me dead, I'd already be dead, Daniel replied. Besides, what choice do we have? They met in a small observation room on the lunar base, with only the stars and Earth visible through the windows. Zorthane arrived alone, which surprised Daniel. No guards, no aides, just the High Emissary, looking somehow smaller than before. Thank you for coming, Zorthane said. His translator made him sound tired. You said it was important. It is. Zorthane moved to the window, looking down at Earth. I have spent the past 4 days studying your species, not through data files or strategic assessments, through your art, your literature, your music, your history. Daniel waited. I watched recordings of your memorial services, Zorthane continued. I read letters written by families of the deceased. I listened to songs you created to honor those who were lost. I observed the way your entire planet came together to mourn. Zorthane. He turned to face Daniel. I have served the Valorian Empire for 300 years. I have negotiated with 47 species. I have overseen the integration of entire civilizations. And in all that time, I never once stopped to consider what we were taking from them. And now? Daniel asked. Now I am afraid I understand. Zorthane's colors shifted to something darker, more muted. Ambassador Hayes, may I tell you about my origins? Go ahead. I was created in Breeding Facility 73. I was one of 842 offspring produced in my batch. We were separated at maturation and assigned to our roles. I have not seen my batchmates in 200 years. I do not know if they are alive or dead. It does not matter to me. Zorthane paused. That is what the Empire taught me. That individuals are replaceable. That attachment is weakness. That emotion serves no purpose. For 300 years, I believed this absolutely. What changed? I read a letter. A simple thing, written by a human child to her mother, who died on Darwin Station. The child described missing her mother's hugs, her bedtime stories, the way she smiled when the child did something good. The child wrote that even though everyone told her to be strong, she just wanted her mother back. That nothing else mattered. Not toys or treats or distractions, just her mother. Zorthane's voice had changed. It was no longer the cold, diplomatic tone. There was something else in it now. Pain, maybe. I realized something while reading that letter, he continued. The child was right. Nothing could replace her mother. She was a specific individual with specific qualities that the child loved. And now, that individual is gone. And the loss is permanent and absolute. Yes, Daniel said softly, and I realized something else. We did that. The Valorian Empire. We created that permanent loss. We destroyed something irreplaceable. And we did it without thinking, without caring, without even recognizing that what we destroyed had value. Zorthane turned back to the window. For 300 years, I have been proud of the Empire. Of our achievements, our expansion, our dominance. But in the past 4 days, I have felt something I never experienced before. Shame. Daniel didn't speak. He sensed this was something Zorthane needed to say. I have read your human philosophy, your ethics, your debates about right and wrong, and I have come to a conclusion that the High Council will call treasonous. Zorthane looked directly at Daniel. The Valorian Empire is wrong, not strategically, not tactically, morally. We are wrong in the most fundamental way possible. We have forgotten the value of individual life. We have lost the ability to love. We have become monsters who justify monstrous actions through efficiency and logic. What are you saying? Daniel asked. I am saying that you were right. That humanity should never join the Empire as it exists. That your emotional attachments are not weakness, but strength. That your love for your home is the most rational thing I have encountered in 3 centuries of service. Zorthane's colors shifted to something Daniel had never seen before. Something that might have been resolution. I am going to do something that no Valorian High Emissary has ever done, Zorthane said. I am going to defy the High Council. He pulled out a communication device and set it on the table between them. This contains a formal treaty proposal. It acknowledges the Valorian Empire's complete responsibility for what you have termed the Saul Massacre. It offers formal apology without qualification or excuse. It grants humanity autonomous status, free from imperial control or interference. It establishes Earth and its solar system as sovereign territory, inviolable by Valorian law. Daniel stared at the device. The High Council approved this? No, they refused. General Thalkros is currently preparing an invasion fleet. The High Council has authorized him to bring Earth under control by any means necessary. Then, what good is this treaty? Because I am going to accept it anyway. In my authority as High Emissary, I am declaring this agreement valid and binding. I am staking my career, my life, and my honor on the principle that you were right and the Empire was wrong. Zorthane met Daniel's eyes. I cannot stop the invasion fleet, but I can delay it. I can create political complications. I can give you time to prepare, and I can ensure that when history looks back on this moment, it will show that at least one Valorian recognized the truth. Why? Daniel asked. Why would you do this? Because I read that letter from the child, and I realized that in 300 years of service, I had never done anything that mattered as much as her mother's bedtime stories. I had never created a bond that strong. I had never loved anyone or anything enough to feel that kind of loss. Zorthane's voice was barely above a whisper. The Empire calls this weakness. But I think it is the only thing that gives life meaning, and I want to believe that even someone like me, created in a laboratory and trained for efficiency, can learn to recognize value when I see it. Daniel picked up the device, his hands shaking slightly. If you sign this, they'll charge you with treason. Yes, they might execute you. Probably. Then why? Zorthane looked at Earth, hanging beautiful and blue in the darkness. Because someone must be the first. Someone must show the Empire that another way is possible. And if my death serves that purpose, then perhaps my life will have finally mattered. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he extended his hand, a human gesture of respect and agreement. Zorthane looked at it, confused. We shake hands to seal agreements, Daniel explained, to show trust and mutual respect. Zorthane reached out slowly. His hand was different from a human's. Longer fingers and strange joints. But when they gripped, the meaning was clear. I accept your treaty, Daniel said. On behalf of humanity, I acknowledge your courage and your sacrifice. And I promise that we will remember what you did here. All Oteen. They held the handshake for a moment longer than necessary. Two beings from different species, different cultures, different philosophies, finding common ground in the simplest of recognitions. That life has value, and some things are worth fighting for. The treaty was signed that evening. Zorthane transmitted it to the High Council, to every Valorian ship, to every corner of the Empire. He included a statement explaining his reasoning, his research into human culture, and his conclusion that the Empire's approach to conquest was morally indefensible. The response was immediate and explosive. General Thalkros demanded Zorthane's arrest. The High Council declared the treaty void. Half the Empire's diplomatic corps supported Zorthane. The other half called for his execution. But the treaty was public now. The entire galaxy had seen it. And more importantly, the subject species of the Valorian Empire had seen it. Species that had been conquered and assimilated for thousands of years suddenly had proof that even Valorians could recognize the injustice of their system. Rebellions started on 3 worlds within a week. Not violent revolutions, but peaceful protests. Species demanding the same autonomy that had been granted to humanity, demanding recognition of their individual worth, demanding to be seen as something more than resources for the Empire. An empire. The Valorian High Council faced a crisis unlike any in their history. They could crush the rebellions, but that would only prove Zorthane's point about their moral bankruptcy. They could negotiate, but that would mean admitting fault. They could invade Earth and make an example, but that would unite every subject species against them. For the first time in 15,000 years, the Empire was forced to question its own foundations. Kelsara was granted asylum on Earth, where she worked with Patricia to establish the first permanent Valorian embassy. She spent her days learning about human culture and her evenings writing reports that challenged everything the Empire believed. General Thalkros was recalled to the capital to face questions about his invasion plans. Without unanimous support from the High Council, the invasion was indefinitely postponed, and Zorthane remained on the lunar base, waiting to hear his fate. 5 years passed. Commander Kyle Bennett stood on the bridge of the ESS Defender, humanity's first true interstellar vessel. It was built from a combination of human engineering and Valorian technology that had been shared willingly, not stolen or reverse engineered. The ship was beautiful, sleek, and powerful, with a crew of 200 humans and 5 Valorians, including Kelsara as the diplomatic officer. They were heading to the Valorian capital for formal recognition of Earth as an independent civilization. The treaty that Zorthane had signed had finally been ratified by the High Council after years of debate and pressure from reformist factions. As they approached the memorial station built at the site where Aurora, Darwin, and Kepler had been destroyed, Kyle ordered the ship to slow. The memorial was a massive structure now, visible from Earth's surface. Every name was inscribed on its walls, in both human languages and Valorian script. Flowers and letters were still left there daily, brought up by shuttles from Earth. Kyle placed his hand against the window of the bridge, looking at the memorial. "We didn't forget," he whispered, just as he did every time he passed this place. "We never will." Behind him, Kelsara stood quietly. She had visited the memorial hundreds of times in the past 5 years. She had learned every name. She had read every letter. It was, she told Patricia once, her penance, her way of honoring the lives that her species had taken. "Are you ready?" Patricia asked, joining them on the bridge. She was the official ambassador now, responsible for all Earth's diplomatic relations. "As ready as I'll ever be," Kyle replied. The journey to the Valorian capital took 2 weeks. When they arrived, they were greeted not with weapons, but with ceremony. The High Council had assembled to formally welcome humanity as an independent member of the galactic community, and standing at the front of the delegation, wearing the robes of a High Council member, was Zorthane. After years of debate and political maneuvering, the reformist faction had finally gained enough power to not only pardon Zorthane but to elevate him to the council itself. He was now one of the voices shaping the Empire's future. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Hundreds of species watched as Patricia shook hands with each council member as the treaty was formally ratified. As Earth took its place among the stars, not as a subject, but as an equal. In his speech, Zorthane spoke about what he had learned from humanity, about love and loss and the irreplaceable value of individual life, about how meeting humans had forced the Empire to confront uncomfortable truths about itself, about how change was difficult, but necessary. "We called them primitive," Zorthane said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "We called their emotions weakness, their attachments inefficient, their love for their home irrational." He paused. "We were wrong. In every possible way, we were wrong. Because in all our centuries of expansion, in all our technological advancement, in all our achievements, we forgot the most important thing. What makes life worth living?" He looked directly at Patricia. "Humanity taught us that. They taught us at great cost, through terrible loss, with courage we did not expect, and strength we did not recognize. They taught us that true power comes not from domination but from connection. That weakness is found not in caring too much but in caring too little. That home is not a resource to be exploited, but a sacred trust to be defended. For 15,000 years, the Valorian Empire has conquered. But humanity taught us something more important than conquest. They taught us the value of a single life, the power of a single voice that refuses to be silenced, the strength of standing for what is right, even when facing impossible odds." He bowed to Patricia, a gesture no High Council member had ever made to a representative of another species. "Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for believing that even the Valorian Empire could learn. Thank you for showing us what we had lost and helping us find it again." Patricia stood and returned the bow. "Thank you for having the courage to admit you were wrong. Thank you for choosing justice over pride. Thank you for proving that change is possible." That evening, Patricia visited the grave of her cousin Jennifer back on Earth via holographic link. She placed virtual flowers and told her about the ceremony, about the treaty, about the changes spreading through the galaxy. "You would have loved seeing it," Patricia said softly. "All these different species starting to talk about individual rights, about the value of life, about home and family and love. Everything you believed in is spreading across the stars because we refuse to let your death be meaningless." She smiled through tears. "We didn't forget, Jen. We never will." Across the galaxy, on worlds that had been subjugated for centuries, beings gathered in small groups to discuss the concept that had come from Earth. They learned a new word, one that resonated in every language and every culture. Home. Not just a place, not just coordinates in space, but an idea, a feeling, a commitment to something greater than oneself, a willingness to fight for what matters, a refusal to let the precious things be taken without consequence. On Earth, in a small town in California, Daniel Hayes sat on his porch and watched the sunset. His sister's children played in the yard, chasing each other and laughing. Above them, the memorial station was just visible as a point of light against the darkening sky. Daniel thought about Kyle and Helen and all the others. He thought about Zorthane and the courage it took to admit fault. He thought about humanity's journey from mourning to anger to negotiation to hope. They had drawn a line in the sand. They had declared that their home mattered, that their people mattered, that love and grief and individual worth were not weaknesses, but fundamental truths. And the galaxy was beginning to listen. His sister came out with iced tea. "You okay?" "Yeah," Daniel said. "Just thinking about how much has changed. Think they'll actually follow through?" "The Valorians?" "I do. Because Zorthane isn't alone anymore. There are others like him now. People who see the value in what we were trying to protect." His sister sat beside him. "Mom would have been proud of you. Standing up to an entire empire like that. We all did it. Every human who refused to let the loss be forgotten, every person who insisted the victims mattered, we did it together." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the children play. Above them, stars were beginning to appear. Some of those stars now had names humanity had learned from their new allies. Some of them had planets where beings were starting to ask questions about autonomy and rights and home. The Valorian Empire was changing. Slowly, painfully, but changing. Because one species had refused to accept that might made right. That conquest justified destruction. That efficiency mattered more than empathy. Daniel raised his glass toward the sky, toward the memorial station, toward the stars where humanity's future waited. "We didn't forget," he said quietly, "and we never will." And somewhere in the darkness between stars, that simple promise echoed. A species that loved its home enough to face an empire, that valued its people enough to risk extinction, that believed in something greater than survival. Humanity had gone to the stars not through conquest, but through conviction. Not through force, but through the simple declaration that some things are too important to compromise. They had declared, "You attacked our home," and the galaxy had learned what that really meant.